The Sorrow of War, Chapter 1. The Jungle of Screaming Soul. In The Sorrow of War, a written named Kien struggles to process his traumatic experience in Vietnam War. A former soldier for the North Vietnamese Army, he has trouble finding happiness in the post-war Vietnam. Even though he fought for the winning side, Ken's life has been completely turned upside down by the war, and he finds himself unable to stop thinking about the horrible things he witnesses. Tormented by the violence of his past, he started writing about his experience, creating non-clear fragment narrative that begins right after the war ended in 1975. In the month after the North victory, Ken was part of the remain gathering team searching for the many people who had gone missing in action. This required him to return to a place as the Jungle of Screaming Soul, where personally witnessed many horrific things over the 10 years he served as a soldier. While working with the remaining gathering team, Ken often heard howl of the jungle at night. The noise caused him to remember an experience he had years before. He and his men were astonished in the jungle of Screaming Soul, and he began to nonsense ghostly figures in their camp. As times went on, he slowly realized that the specters that came in and out of the camp were ghosts, but three young women living in the farm nearby. Three of the soldiers had developed romantic relationship with this woman, and True Ken knew he should put an end of the night meeting. He could not bring himself to do it. He could never get it the way of love. Chapter 2. The Longing for Peace. Ken reflects on the peaceful day before the war, particularly his relationship with Pong. Before the conflict shattered their lives, Ken and Pong shared a deep and innocent love marked by the simplicity and joy of youth. Their relationship is portrayed as a symbol of everything that was lost to the war. Ken reminisces about their time together, recalling moments of happiness and intimacy that now seems like distant memories. These reflections are triggered with a sense of nostalgia and regret as Ken realizes how much he and Pong have changed due to the war. It contrasts the idyllic past with the harsh reality of the present, highlight Ken longing for the peace and innocence, and once defined his life. It explores emotional and psychological impact of the war on the individual, showing how it was left deep scars on Ken's souls. The love between Ken and Pong serves as poignant reminder to the life that might have been had the war not intervened. True Ken memories underscore the theme of lost innocence and the enduring sorrow of comes from the irrevocable changes wrought by war. Chapter 3. The Lost Battalion. The narrative shift to Ken's harrowing experience during the war, focusing on the devastating loss of battalion, vividly captures the chaos, fear, and brutality of battle, immersing the reader in horrifying realities that Ken and his comrades faced. Karen recounts the tragic event that leads to the annihilation of his battalion. The soldiers are depicted as brave yet vulnerable, caught in the relentless and unforgiving mercenary of war. The detailed description of combat filled with explosion, gunfire, and the carries of the wounded underscore the brutality and futility of the conflict. Amidst of carnage, Ken struggles with his own fear and the envy responsibility of leadership. He witnessed the death of his close friend and comrades, each loss a personal blow that compounds his trauma, delves into the psychological toll of war, illustrating how the constant threat of death and the overwhelming violence leave deep emotional scars on the soldier. The narrative also touches on the sense of camaraderie and brotherhood among the soldiers, highlight their shared struggles and the bond formed in the face of adversity. However, these bonds are continually shattered by the relentless onslaught of war, leaving Kian to grapple with profound grief and survival guilt. Chapter 4. The Return. In Chapter 4, The Sorrow of War, Ken returned to Hanoi after the war, struggling to reintegrate into civilian life. The transformation from soldier to civilian is fraught with difficulty as to confront a world that feels alien and disconnected from his traumatic experience. Ken finds it challenge to reconcile his wartime memories with the normalcy of post-war life. The sight and sound of the city evoke haunting reconciliation of the battlefield, making it hard for him to escape the past. He is constantly reminded of the friend he lost and the horrors of witnesses from weigh heavily on his mind. One of the central themes of his chapter is Ken's relationship with Pong. The reunion is strained and bittersweet as both have been deeply altered by the war. Pong, like Ken, carries her own scar and trauma and explores the complexities of the relationship, highlight how the war has created between them and seems immutable. Ken struggled to find a sense, purpose, and belonging in the post-war world. Above all, he is haunted by survival guilt and the question of his sacrifices were for. It portrays an alienation and isolation showing how the war continues to affect him long after finding has extended. Chapter 5. The Writing. Ken finds solace and means of copying with his trauma through writing. He delves into his process of documenting his wartime experience, an endeavor that served as both critics and a way to make sense of his past. Ken's decision to write about the war is driven by his needs to confront and understanding the overwhelming emotion and memories that haunt him. Through writing, he seeks to recognize the chaotic and painful fragment of his past, hoping to find some measures of peace. The act of writing becomes a therapeutic process, allowing him to externalize his inner turmoil and gain a sense of control over his experience. It explores the themes of memory and storytelling and reflects on the importance of preserving the stories of those who fought and died, as well as the lesson learned from the war. He grapples with the challenges conveying the true horror of complicity of the conflict, a word that word can never fully capture reality what he and comrades endure. Ken writing also serves as a tribute to his fallen friend and comrades by recording their stories. He honored sacrifices and ensured their memories are not forgotten. It highlights the power of storytelling as a means of preserving history and giving voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. Chapter 6. The Train to the Front. Ken recalled his journey to the front lines, a pivotal moment that marked the beginning of his combat experience. He offered glimpses into the anticipation, camaraderie, and apprehension that soldiers feel as they head toward the unknown danger of war. The narrative focused on the train ride to the front where Ken and his fellow soldier bound shared fear and dreams. The atmosphere in the train is a mix of anxiety and excitement as the soldiers try to maintain their spirit despite the looming threat of the battle. The camaraderie among them palpable, providing a sense of solidarity and mutual support in the face of anxiety. Ken's reflection during the train journey highlights his inner thought and emotion. He is clearly aware of the stark contrast between the peaceful countryside they passed through and the brutal realities awaiting them at the front. The juxtaposition underscored the tragic irony of war, where beauty and destruction coexist. Chapter 7. The Survivor. In the Chapter 7 of The Sorrow of War, Ken encountered the survivor of the war, each bearing their own scar and traumas. This chapter expands the narrative to include the stories of various individuals who, like Ken, have been profoundly affected by the conflict. As Ken meets the fellow veteran, their conversation reveals the diverse way in which the war has impacted their lives. Some have found the impossible of reintegrate into a society, while others are haunted by the memories and guilt. These encounters highlight the shared yet unique experience of those who survived, emphasizing that each person's journey through and after the war is different. Can interaction with the survivor deepen his own reflection on the war and its aftermath? He seems mirror in their lives the same struggles he faced, copying with loss, dealing with psychological trauma, and finding a place in a world that has moved on without them. These stories add layers on the narrative, illustrating widespread and lasting impact of the conflict on entire generation. Chapter 8. The Love That Was. Ken delves deeply into his memories of love for Pong, reflecting on the times they shared before the war drastically altered their lives. This chapter is the fragrant exploration of love, loss, and enduring impact of war on a person's relationship. Ken reminisces about his early days with Pong, recalling moments of pure joy and intimacy that seems almost surreal compared to those horror he later experienced. Their love is depicted as tender and innocent, a stark contrast to the brutality of war. These memories are bittersweet, filled with longing for the past that can never be reclaimed. Chapter 9. The Night of the Battle. In the Chapter 9 of The Sorrow of War, Ken recounts a particularly brutal and pivotal night during the war, where the intensity of the combat and the strategy losses deeply scattered him. This chapter delves into his visceral realities of the battle, emphasizes physical and psychological toll it takes on soldier. The narrative flanks the readers into the chaos of the horror of the night. Explosion, gunfire, and the screams of the wounded fill the air, creating nightmarish atmosphere. Can vividly describe the fear, confusion, and adrenaline that accompanies such intense combat situation. The graphic and harrowing details underscore the brutality of the war and the sheer will survive amidst of the carnage. Throughout the battle, Ken witnessed the death of the many of his comrades. Each loss his devastating blow compounding his trauma, sense of helplessness. The chapter portrays the random, senseless natures of death in the war, where lives are extinguished in the instant, often without warning or reason. Ken's feeling of guilt and despair are palpable as he struggles to come to terms with the loss of many friends. Amidst of the chaos, moments of bravery, camaraderie shine through Ken and his fellow soldier, exhibit acts of heroism and solidarity, supporting each other in their shared order. These moments of human connection provide some solace and a sense of purpose in the midst of the violence. Chapter 10. The Aftermath. The sorrow of war delves into aftermath the conflict for Ken. They explore the lingering effect of the war, both individual and society. This chapter focuses on the emotional and physiological toll that Ken continues to grapple with long after the fighting cease. The narrative begins with Ken return from the war, highlight his struggle to find sense of normalcy in a world forever changed by the conflict. He confronts survival guilt haunted by the memories of those who did not make it back. The chapter delves into his attempt to reconcile the trauma he experienced with the needs to move forward with his life. Chapter 11. The Weight of Memory. The rainy season returned, enveloping Hanoi in a melancholic atmosphere. Ken wandered the busy street, feeling isolated despite the bustling city. The war and left lingering shadow in his mind, recalling lost friend and the relentless struggle. His once hopeful relationship with Pong had been distant, painful memory. Ken encountered fellow veterans sharing silent acknowledgement of their shared past. Night were relentless, with nightmares of the battlefield, with writing become Solon's visiting unmarked grave of his closest friend. Ken he felt overwhelming grief and regret. The war had stolen future, yet moment of resilience emerged again, so determination to rebuild and the slaughter of children costing his dark memories, writing providing chaotic release, aiming to honor the fallen boys, the survivor's silent suffering. Ken accepted the sorrow of war would always be part of him, but by confronting his past, he found semblance of peace. The weight of memory would always be there, but it no longer defined him. Chapter 12. The Ghost of Yesterday. Hanoi blasting street made Ken feel detached, haunted by the war, lingering specter in his small apartment. Writing became his solace, yet some wounds remained unhealed. A letter from his old comrade, Kwang, invited him to the countryside. There amidst rolling hills simplicity Ken evade Kwang new life, and family. As they shared struggle by the fire, Ken found comfort in Kwang acceptance of their past. Returning to Hanoi with renewed purpose, Ken volunteered at the local school, finding joy in helping children. His writing shifted to include survival and hope, integrating despair with resilience. Ken realized he could coexist with his memories, honoring the past while embrace of a future shaped by hope and compassion. Chapter 13. The Echoes of Silence. Years had passed, but then memories of the war remained vivid now. Retired from teaching and writing, he found solace in solitude and reflection, his typewriter unused. Wandering Hanoi Old Quarter, he discovered a book of poetry that resonated deeply with him. Inspired, Ken visited an old battlefield torn memorial where he prayed for peace and felt inside lifting of his burden. Returning to Hanoi, he began frequenting the bookstore and resuming writing, focused on life, beauty rather than war. An unexpected visit with Lan, a wartime nurse, wrinkled old bond. Lan had found peace caring for orphan, and together they decided to write a book, capturing stories of resilience and hope from the war. Chapter 14. A New Dawn. In his 60s, Ken felt newfound peace in Hanoi. His book with Lan, Echoes of Silence, had touched many lives, opening dialogues and healing Wood's letter from the readers. Like a young woman named Mai, showed the impact of their work. My father, Mr. Fu, inspired by the book, shared his war stories for the first time. bringing their families closer. Ken visited my village bonding with Mr. Wu. Our shared experience inspired Ken and Lan organized gathering for veterans and their family, fostering healing and community. At one event, Ken reconnected with Min, an artist they collaborate with resilience and remembrance, an exhibition combining Min and art with Ken, writing which was surrounded successful. Standing in the gallery, Ken felt fulfilled. He had transformed his past sorrow in a narrative resilience and hope, finding peace and contributing to others. Healing, he learned to live with his memories, embracing both and pain, beauty, and human experience. Chapter 15, Seed of Tomorrow. In his later years, Ken found relatives peace, deepening his bond with Lan and continuing to help others heal. One spring, Mai, inspired by Ken and her father's Mr. Bu, invited him to the village ceremony. There they planted trees to honor those who fought and fell in the war. Ken planted the first tree, symbolizing growth, renewal, and embrace. Inspired by experience, Ken decided to write a book about the younger generation stories capturing their resilience and hope. Traveling across Vietnam, he gathered the perspective for his book, Seed of Tomorrow, which celebrate the enduring human spirit. The book was accumulated, sparking conversation about history and the future. Ken's life came full circle and transformed his pain into purpose, finding fulfillment in connecting past and future generation. He felt gratitude and peace knowing he was part of a larger journey that would continue to inspire long after he was gone. Chapter 16, The Last Journey. As Ken renewed his 70th birthday, he felt the weight of time and the richness of the experience ranging from profound sorrow to expected joy. On autumn morning, he received a letter from Pong, an old friend who had moved to France. Pong invited Ken to visit, an offer Ken accepted, seeing the symbolic culmination of his life journey. In France, Ken and Pong reconnected, sharing memories of their youth and the war that had shaped their lives. They explored the French countryside, commiserated about their past, and visited the memorial Vietnamese soldier. This prompted a visited Pong, a brother grave, providing closure and healing for both men. Ken's visit to France was filled with cultural exploration and new experience. Returning to Hanoi, he felt profound peace and continued to share his story, finding hope and inspiration in his journey. Reflecting by the Red River, Ken realized he had transformed the darkest experience into successful strength. In his story become testament to those resilience of the human spirit and enduring power of hope. Chapter 17, The Internal Chaos, the last chapter. Ken's life marked by war, sorrow, and profound healing was nearing its end. He spent his day content surrounded by friend, family, and the young people he mentored, ensuring the past was remembered. The autumn evening, he sat on the porch overlooking his garden. He reflected on the trees he planted in the memory of the fallen comrade, symbol of resilience growth. Feeling grateful for his purposeful life and the leaves untouched, Ken was at peace with his approaching end. At that night, peacefully drifted into sleep, dreaming of his youth and the Red River endless flow. His final dream took to him back there 4 days of his childhood. Ken passed gently surrounded by the loved ones, including his steadfast companion, Lan. His funeral celebration of his life and legacy with the old friend, family, and mentless, honoring him. The grove of trees village stood as living memorial to the impact of the hope he inspired. That's all. Thank you.